I realized that maybe not everybody's doing this, and we need to figure out a way to start doing this some way, shape, and form. And that it's simply like based on this overall general premise that conversations lead to conversions, right? The more sales conversations we have with our prospects, the more conversions we're going to have. Now, it doesn't mean we close everybody, and it doesn't mean we have a 80% closing ratio, but what it does mean is that we put priority on having conversations one way or another. And I think the problem is when we start to create these online advertising platforms, some of us tend to get a little lazy and we're like, okay, well, I'm just going to let the system do its thing. And if they put calls on my calendar, great. If they don't, I'm not going to have any sales conversations. That's probably one of the things that's holding us back from like cashing in some checks right away. Because even if either A, the funnel is currently working and driving ads, B, the fast track is not completely finished set up and driving ads, or anything in between, there are still very simple, organic, let's call it guerrilla ways to have conversations, right? There are past client of ours or past prospects of ours or lead list people or JV partners or someone where we can do old school, and I call it guerrilla marketing, but it's old school, just like reach out to people, strike up some conversations. If they're old leads, you strike up the conversations by simply writing out and saying, hey, I was thinking about you. I know we had a conversation back in the past, just wanted to see where you're at with things because we've changed a few things and now here's where we're at with it. So that's one way to do it. If there's old JV partners or people referred business to you, or I know, John, you've had some JV partners where you like teach on other people's platforms or anything like that. There's ways to just go back to people and say, hey, is there another opportunity for me to hold another webinar, to write another article, to do a joint live stream, to do a webinar class, a joint something to strike up some conversations? There may be just people in your network, on your social channels or on your email, who you know that they're an ideal prospect of yours, but you just never really approached them or never had a conversation about them. Maybe they do know what you do, or maybe they don't know what you do. I don't know, but you could start reaching out to folks and just start having conversations. And these are great ways just to like bridge the gap in between if marketing is working exactly the way you want or not. It's as you're optimizing your current processes to make sure they're working, whether it's, or anything in between. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all of us could have 3 to 5 conversations a day with people in our networks that will, some of which will lead to a sales conversation, some of which will lead to people enrolling into our program. So I just want to throw that out there because sometimes, again, as we are building our processes, optimizing our processes, or we're leaning back on the reality that, hey, I've got a digital marketing system that's supposed to do some work, et cetera, et cetera. When we lean on those automations per se, we kind of get lazy on the manual work. And this is also true of when people start booking calls. Like we've got a ton of clients who are like, well, Nick, we've got a no-show rate of whatever, 30%. 30% of the people booking calls are not showing up. What do we do? I said, well, what are you doing? And they said, well, nothing. We just have the automations that go out from Go High Level and all these various other things. I said, that's cool, but you're getting lazy. You're just depending on the automations. Automations serve a purpose, but have you manually called them to confirm the bookings? Have you manually called them 2 hours before a booking to make sure they're going to show up? Well, we haven't done that. So we need to do that. So again, the emphasis here is not just to rely on technology, is not to simply rely on the systems, is not to rely on anything wholeheartedly without first deploying some like grunt effort and some manual effort to be able to push that forward in order to ensure that we are moving conversations along. Because again, without conversations, we don't get closes, and without closes, nobody's making any money. So we have to creatively come up with ways every single day to have 1 to 5 conversations with somebody, or at least initiate 1 to 5 conversations with somebody in order to start that process. And the other kind of lasting benefit off that is even if a conversation doesn't lead to a close, like obviously that's our ideal outcome. It's we have a conversation that leads to a close. But even if that conversation doesn't lead to a close, what it does is it provides a great amount of data and feedback around what people are thinking and or feeling or objections that they have, or hey, I'm not ready because blank, or whatever the answers or the reasons are. It's important for us to have that information as well. So I don't know how else to say it except a couple times saying the same thing. Today, tomorrow, the next day, let's figure out ways we can initiate 1 to 3 conversations with potential prospects, even if that means a cold outreach, right? Even if that means we don't have someone in our database that we can reach out at from a warm perspective. Do we have a friend of a friend on LinkedIn, a connection? Or can we just, I mean, in Diego's case, go onto a website where their interior kind of design stuff is not up to par and send an email out to whatever emails listed on the contact us and just be like, hey, I know this is a cold outreach. I apologize for that. I'm in this space. I'm a motion graphic designer. I'm new to this space. We started working with interior design type companies. I noticed that your website might use a few improvements. Here are some things that I thought. No pressure or anything like that. But if you can find any value in having a further conversation about this, let's have a conversation about it. And look, 90% of those people are just going to say, F you, leave me alone. I'm not interested. But 10% of the people might come back and say, well, thanks. That was super helpful. Let me know what you're thinking. And then you can have a conversation with them, and you can either be a performance-based conversation where you're basically like, hey, here are my fees. I can do this project for you, but how about this? You only pay me after I deliver the result and you're happy with it. That's a very easy, no risk approach to get somebody involved. And that could lead to them referring other people. You could say, hey, again, I'm not a big fan of, hey, I'll do this in exchange for a testimonial, because then you're just doing work for free. Not really up for that. But you could say, hey, pay a little bit now, pay the rest at the end, only if you're thrilled with the results, like whatever you need to do. But the point is, there are always ways every single day where we could be having a conversation or starting a conversation or initiating a conversation with somebody who wants our services. And if we're not having those conversations, we're not making money. We're not having deals processed. And there's only so many days we can go without that happening before things get pretty tough. Right. So the point here is, don't rely on a certain system, a certain methodology, a certain everything. If there are not calls on your calendar today or tomorrow, go get calls on your calendar today or tomorrow. Right. However you need to do that. And there's a multitude of ways that we could try that. Is it the most effective way? Maybe not. Is it a lot of hard work? Absolutely. But is it worth it? Yes. Once you start that momentum of sending that, hell, if you have a social following, you could post and say, hey, I'll have conversations with 3 to 4 people in the HR space today. I just held a webinar, had all these questions asked. If you're in the HR space and want to have a conversation about XYZ, I'll make that available to you. You can book a call here, right? No strings attached, no obligations. I'm just trying to provide value to my marketplace, and my trust is that a handful of you, after you get value, may consider working with me to expand things further, so on and so forth.